Hello, and welcome to another exciting episode of Beyond the Bots, the series where we shine the light on the tremendous world of FIRST, connect with the FIRST competitive robotics community, and explore the possibilities within FIRST and beyond. I'm Blair from FIRST, and it is my pleasure to be with you for another fun and interesting episode. Now, we are really excited about this episode because we get to celebrate what we all love: robots! It's National Robotics Week here in the United States, and how better to celebrate than to highlight some of the cutting-edge robots which are currently in use by some of our terrific sponsors. We've gathered an all-star roster of FIRST sponsors whose impressive and diverse robotics applications are improving the world. Organizations like the United States Air Force, FedEx, and Disney are all incorporating robotics, with their needs driving the leading edge of robotics technology. Today, we're going to highlight their innovative ways of incorporating robots into their worlds to improve efficiency, safety, and customer service and experience. And joining me will be a couple of very familiar alums and FIRST mentors, guest hosts Libby, Kamen, and Karthik, Kanagasabapathy. But before I hand it over to Libby and Karthik, we want to remind you that we'd love your voice in the conversation. So please use the chat to send in your questions for our guests. We are live. And continue to share your team stories at hashtag FirstGameChangers, which we monitor to look for more teams to highlight later in our Beyond the Bots series. Also, check the wall to see what other teams around the world are up to this season. And it's also Global Volunteer Month, so a big thanks to all the FIRST volunteers, coaches, mentors, and parents. FIRST wouldn't be here without their tireless efforts. So be sure to show your appreciation even more this month. All right, it's time to get in the game. Here we are with Libby and Karthik to help us celebrate National Robotics Week. Welcome, Libby and Karthik.
Thank you, Blair.
Thank you,
Great to
Blair.
be here. Libby, are you
It's gonna
pumped
be
for
an
like
awesome
National Robotics
evening.
Week? Yeah, it's going to be a lot of good stuff going on, and we have some great stuff. And so, Libby, how are we starting the show off today?
Oh, I'm so excited for our first guest. Thank you, Karthik, for asking. It's going to be a great one. Our very first segment here on Beyond the Bots for the evening is with the United States Air Force. We've got Master Sergeant Christopher Miller. Master Sergeant Miller, thank you so much for being here. Can you tell us a little bit about your role with the United States Air Force to get us started?
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm really excited about this. A little bit about myself. My name's Christopher Miller. I've been in the Air Force about 14 years, and currently I'm filling the role of Superintendent of Operations Support. And right now I'm really diving into the technologies section. So that's really what my focus is right now, is trying to incorporate all the technology we have on the outside and utilize it for military, for strategic vision, and for just to make ease of life a little bit easier for us.
That's fantastic. And since you're here for National Robotics Week, I know we're going to dive into some really fun technology. We wanted to discuss some of the ways that the Air Force has been using robotics. So can you tell us, I'm really excited for this one. Can you tell us about the new semi-autonomous robot dog on duty at your base? I'm pretty sure our audience would love to hear some details.
I
Yeah,
want to hear these details. I'm pumped for this. Robot dog, like this is what it's about.
Yeah, robot dogs are all the rage right now. So for us, we decided we needed to take a look at a lot of things that we were doing and figure out how to do it better, how to do it easier. And we decided to partner with a company called Ghost Robotics, and they're actually partnered with another company, Immersive Wisdom. And with that company, they produced a phenomenal product. It's a semi-autonomous dog with a virtual reality headset platform that you could actually drive the dog. How we're utilizing it is we're using it as an additional, pretty much like think about it as a base defense Roomba. Everyone has Roombas at their house. They go around, they clean everything up. That's what we're using these dogs for. There are additional sensor platforms that we can use on multiple areas of our base. I'm seeing some clips right now. This is just some of the footage that we have. These things are wild. We're able to drive them with the program made by Immersive Wisdom, and we're also able to drive these with a controller. With just a normal Android controller, we can walk it around, we can do demonstrations, and I can actually physically make this do whatever I want it to.
So taking a look at this robot, and as we're seeing it kind of, move around, our community's so used to wheeled robots. That's just kind of the thing that they're used to. Robots that drive around kind of like cars and that sort of deal. But you're dealing with a walking robot. So how does this beautiful robotic dog handle the different sorts of terrains that they see on the base?
So that's a great question because our base is, so we're located in Tyndall Air Force Base in Panama City, Florida. So we have sand, we have swamp, we have mud, we have forest, we have literally everything you could have. So these companies have actually geared up with a lot of different companies to try to figure out exactly what the best kind of shoe, essentially. We're putting shoes on the dogs to make sure that they're not slipping through the mud. They're able to not get stuck. They're able to traverse the terrain as well as they can. One of the cool things with these is these things are crazy. They go about 4.5 miles an hour. They can walk up about a 45-degree incline. They can operate between negative 40 degrees all the way up to 140 degrees. So they're very versatile. Right now, we're the first in the United States Air Force and the DoD that's actually using these. And there's other test bases that are going to try to use it in different kind of climates.
Oh, that's amazing, the resiliency to adapt to these different sorts of climates. And so you said, I want to hear more about these shoes, because you said that you've tried on different. Now, is this a matter of you're testing to find the one optimal one, or do you put on different shoes depending on the conditions, like the weather, if it's rainy or something like that?
So that's something the company Ghost Robotics is actually working on. They're just trying to figure out for longevity what shoe is going to last the longest, what compound, what type of plastics, what type of rubbers. They've actually, without saying the name, they've actually partnered with some actually shoe companies to make the rubber for the shoes. So something that we all wear every day, and they're just trying to get the compounds right for our terrain. These applications may change. What works at Tyndall Air Force Base may not work at a different Air Force Base. We just don't know yet. And that's what we're excited to figure out over the next year or so.
Well, that's really cool. Yeah, please, Libby, please.
I was going to say, well, first, of course, you're excited about the shoes, Karthik. But I think one of the things that is so unique, the way you're describing it, we've got, of course, first students and mentors and alumni in our chat here. That's so similar to their process, right? No, it's not shoes. It's not, a walking dog, although maybe somebody will do it. But what's the right wheel for this? What's the right component for the surface? How often do I need to test it? And I love the idea of how collaborative this sounds, right? With just so many different companies and vendors and shoe companies working together. It really, it feels a lot like the experience some of our students have. I just think that's wonderful.
Yeah, Libby, it's totally. Sorry, please, Master Sergeant.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, yeah, it's been a very collaborative environment for all of us. So not only the vendor with Ghost Robotics, Immersive Wisdom, the Air Force, we've had a lot of help through every different variation of people within the Air Force. We have people from Hanscom Air Force Base helping us out with actually getting the equipment to us. We have our base civil engineers helping us out with making sure the dog houses are in the charging pads, have enough power. It's a team effort all across Team Tyndall over here and across the Team Air Force. So we're excited.
And as you should be, and I think as our entire audience is, because we're seeing a bunch of questions through in chat right now. And so one thing that I want to ask about, you talked a little bit about how you have the virtual reality headset, and you also have an Android phone that we control it. Now, you control this specifically, right?
So when I'm doing demonstrations, when it's in front of me, I do have the ability to take control of it at any time. How we're going to utilize it is utilizing the Immersive Wisdom software platform that's going to be located with our Base Defense Operations Center. So think about it like a dispatcher for 911. Someone's back there constantly. They're manning it. They're manning the phones. They're making sure we have our patrols exactly where we need them. So what they're going to do is if that robot goes out and its sensor gets triggered somehow, it's going to send back a notice to us. We're going to be able to take control of the dog, i.e. put on the virtual reality headset, and we can actually look around and make sure the dog sees what we're seeing, or we're seeing what the dog is seeing. And we can give verbal commands through it. So if you happen to come up, Libby, and I saw you on the camera, I could be like, hey, this is Security Forces installation. What are you doing here? And that would be enough to hopefully stop you from what you're doing.
I don't want to get in trouble with the dog.
I would love to see Libby's reaction if a robotic dog came up to you and be like, "Excuse me, ma'am, or what are you doing here?" So,
ma'am, what are you doing here?
Ma'am?
I would just tell it how good of a boy it is. That's the problem. I'd be like, oh, hi.
All the belly rubs.
Exactly.
That's really dangerous in this case.
Hey, Libby, it looks like we've got some really good questions coming in from the chat. You want to take a look and see what our audience is saying right now?
Yeah, we've got a couple of good ones. Our first one is fairly simple. I think you covered this a little bit, but how are the robot dogs powered? What does that look like for them? Do they have a battery that they sit home and charge in? What does that look like for that process?
So they actually do have an internal battery. So off one battery life, the dog can last approximately 6 to 7 hours, depending on how far they're going. So if I just turned it on and let it sit here, it could stay on for about 6 to 7 hours. But when it's actually under some stress or some tension, it's walking, it will travel about 5 to 7 miles, and then it'll have to come back and recharge. We have it set up to where it's going to have a wireless charging pad, which is what we're calling their dog houses. So these dog houses, the dog's going to be able to come back on its own. It's going to be able to dock itself, and it's going to be able to feed itself. And then once it's fed and it's able to continue, it'll go back out and it'll do another loop with surveillance.
I wish my dog fed himself and put himself to recharge. That would be pretty great. The question from chat that we have on this topic of their dog houses and do you guys name the dogs? They have is it Spot? Is it Fido? Or are they 1, 2, 3, and 4?
So right now they don't have names because we're going to actually make it a fun competition on Tyndall Air Force Base. So we're going to let our squadron, the Security Forces, the 325th Security Forces Squadron, we're going to let our personnel name one. We're going to let the management office name one. And then we're actually going to have a naming contest across the installation and let the rest of Team Tyndall kind of help us name them. So we'll let you know what those names are.
That's perfect. Karthik, what other questions do we have coming from the chat?
The one question, and it's a little bit interesting. I'm not sure if you're going to be able to answer it for us, but if you could, it'd be great. Do the dogs use any form of AI and learn as they go, or is they always being pre-programmed or controlled?
So they do have a level of AI to them. So, for instance, when we were mapping the area that they were actually going to be walking every day, like their patrol area, if you will. So while they're walking the more and more that dog is hand walked by a controller or by a person, the more it's going to understand the terrain it's traveling. So if it travels that route 3-4 times and doesn't see a tree, and then the 5th time it comes up to it and it sees something in its way, it's going to stop and try to figure out exactly what it's looking at. So it may trigger back an alarm to us so we could clear it out and we can add it to what the database or the data mapping is, and then that way next time the dog knows how to go around it. So we don't have to keep going out there and moving things. We could go out there and clear the obstacle, but it does have built-in obstacle avoidance.
That's
cool.
Pretty it's just kind of cool to see this technology, how it evolves, it's learning and it's continually improving. It's that same sort of iterative process that the teams go through with robots, so it's nice.
Super fascinating. Some of our questions from chat are also, how did you get to become the dog handler, and what kind of skills are involved in operating the dogs?
So I actually got put into this position. They just needed to fill the superintendent role in the technology and logistics, and some of the stuff in my background. I'm familiar with a lot of camera systems and things of that nature. So this kind of just got sprung on me. But it's definitely been a learning curve. I've had to figure out a lot of things that I honestly have never been into robotics. I've just never had that opportunity. But now seeing this stuff real world operational, it's pretty cool to understand that instead of leveraging a human or putting out one of us, we can actually utilize technology and make our lives easier, and then utilize us for what we're good at. We're good at interacting with the public, especially if we're conducting law enforcement operations. It's a lot more intimidating for a robot dog to go try to talk to somebody than it is for a human. So we're trying to leave the technology to cover our gaps and help leverage the humans to be able to do what we're good at.
One question from the chat is about, the repairability of these dogs. Are they, if something goes wrong, is it a simple sort of fix where you're just fixing one single component, or is it like you have to like open it up and, make some sort of big changes?
Oh boy, I hope not. But honestly, the dog is pretty simple. It's got 5 components. It's got the main motherboard component, so the body, and it's got the 4 legs. With that being said, the legs are able to be changed out in about 3 to 5 minutes with minimal training. I learned how to do it very quickly, so that part is pretty easy. If there's a motherboard issue, we're going to have to send it back to the company. They'll send us back a new part, or they'll fix whatever they need to, and they'll send it back to us. But for the legs, we could have 2 or 3 spare legs on hand, and I could change those out within minutes with minimal tools in the field.
Wow, that is very, very impressive. Our teams will relate to that one because they always design their robots so they need to be able to fix them in 6 minutes. That's the distance between 2 matches. So it's really cool to see that.
Yeah, for sure. I can tell the question about repairability was asked by first alum, because it's always about how quickly can we get this back together and how modular is it. This has been so awesome, Master Sergeant Miller. But as we kind of move to close up on our dogs, although I'd love to keep talking about these good boys, what do you think the future looks like for this technology? What other uses are they envisioned to have?
Oh, honestly, this platform is just getting started. There's so many other things that we can do with this. Right now, we're just using it for surveillance, but there's so many other gadgets you can link to these. So whether that be drones, whether that be radios, using these as mobile repeaters for cell phone towers, I think we could do all sorts of things with these. I'm very curious to see how they react in different climates, because I've only seen the climate here at Tyndall, but that'd be very interesting because it could save a lot of my fellow defenders out there. It could save us some cold trips in some of the northern tier bases. So it's definitely interesting to see what it could be used for. And not even looking from a perspective of security forces, but we have explosive ordnance folks that use robots on a regular basis. We could actually use this technology to help them out, or they could use it, retrofit it with their own gadgets. So think of this as just a platform, and then we're putting applications on top of it. So it's honestly endless, and I'm very excited to see what happens in the next 3, 4, 5 years.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for your insight time today, Master Sergeant Christa Miller of the United States Air Force. We appreciate your time, and I can't wait to see them either. Even just watching the videos, I want to see one up close. They look super, super cool. Thank you for joining us tonight.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So Karthik, I know you are going to introduce us to our next guest. Who do we have coming up next for National Robotics Week?
Well, we're going to do a little bit of a change of pace. We're talking robotic dogs, but, robots, I mean, we know robots are everywhere. There's applications in all sorts of industries, but I think sometimes you can be surprised on what robots are being used for. And our next guest is from one of the great first supporters. They're winners of one of the Founders Award a few years ago. So I'd like to welcome Aaron Prather, Senior Technical Advisor at FedEx, which is he's going to talk to us about the use of robotics in the world of shipping to help, keep pace and for worker safety. So welcome, Aaron.
Hey, thanks guys for having me today.
Thank you for being here, Aaron. And, thank you for joining us to celebrate National Robotics Week. And thank you to FedEx for being such a great longtime supporter of FIRST. That partnership has been, as part of FIRST as long as I can remember. And even when I was a high school student, FedEx was getting my robot, to the championship and across borders. It was like really great stuff. So I'd love to know, what's your role at FedEx and how is robotics involved in your role?
Yeah, great question, Karthik. I'm the Senior Technical Advisor for the Technology Research and Planning team at FedEx. And my team really is the tip of the spear when it comes to new technologies. So that's where robotics really just falls into our lap. And we're always looking for new ways to use technology like robotics to help our employees, help our customers solve numerous types of problems that they're facing. So my team really gets to get in there and really play around with these new technologies like robotics.
And, speaking of the new technologies like robotics, we've gotten a bit of a sneak preview here, but we know you have a new multi-axis sortation robot at your facility in Memphis. Can you tell us all the details? Because we got a bunch of robot nerds in the audience today, and they want to know how this thing works.
Oh, yeah. These guys we added actually last year before the pandemic hit. So they've been in the planning works for a long time. And quite frankly, thank God we have them, because they have been awesome to have in our operations here in Memphis. A lot of folks might not realize is that Memphis is the busiest cargo airport in the United States. And we're actually thinking we might actually be the busiest cargo airport in the world after the final data numbers come in 2020. But these robots are being used to actually sort our small packages. As packages come into our sort facility, they have to be inducted into a scanner so we can find out where the next destination is going. So these robots are picking and placing each package into the sorter. And as this video shows, as you can see that they're picking from pretty much a bin of packages as they come in. And these are very different types of packages, from these polymorphic bags to individual letters to boxes. And they're different colors, different shapes, different sizes. And the robots have to actually figure out on their own how to do that each time. So it's really amazing technology.
Okay, well, this is impressive. And you said the magic words that the robot has to figure out on its own how to pick it up. So, for our audience who they build their own autonomous robots that are doing these sorts of challenges, they'd love to know, what types of, sensing is it using? Is it using vision? Is it using proximity, AI interfaces? Any details you can give us here?
Oh, it is using a lot of things. And the primary one is a camera-based system that is actually looking down on that bin to figure out what the next pick should be. So as it picks a package and it places the package, there's actually then another camera to make sure that the package has been placed correctly, because as it goes into the scanner, it needs to be sort of aligned to hit the next belt down the line. So the robot's not only trying to figure out how to pick it correctly, it's got to place it correctly. And it's using camera systems for that. But also throughout the entire work cell, there's a bunch of other sensors that are making sure that the packages, how packages are coming in, making sure they're coming in at a nice rate for the robot, making sure that the package is exited the cell correctly. So there's a lot of stuff going on that makes this a complete operation.
Wow. And so when it's making the decision on, which package to pick next, is it using, I'm assuming there's obviously an algorithm, but in terms of priorities, is it closest package? Is it package that, makes the least amount of mess in the stack? Any details? That's just so
it's really, oh yeah. I mean, it is really just trying to figure out what makes the best sense for the picker at that time. And you can see it's coming in at different angles sometimes, but it is trying to work itself down to totally clear that bin. And as you can see, there's more packages in line ready to come in. So it's trying to clear that bin as quickly as possible. And the algorithm is helping it figure that out. And then as soon as it's cleared, the sensor actually turns the belt on to fill it back up. So it's a very interesting thing. And what's been great about these robots is they do learn. There is an AI learning algorithm. So as the robot sees new packages, it actually learns better ways of doing things. And that all the robots share the same brain. After one robot sees it, the whole system sees it. And then so it's actually, the system has gotten faster over time. And we expect that these robots will just continually improve and keep learning as they see more of these package types.
It's really fascinating to me, because I remember in my computer science class, one of the common problems that you have to solve is an algorithm if you were playing pick up sticks. And it's that's what's a very common question that students have. And this is taking that to 7 levels into the future and doing something that's solving a real world problem. So to me, that's really great. Don't you think this is so cool, Libby?
This is incredible. Just even watching that video work, I'm totally mesmerized by how it kind of figures it out. Now, of course, my background with the first robotics competition is mechanical, so my brain's going to that arm and just how much it can move. How many axes? How many axes is the robot? What's the degrees of freedom? I just want to dive into like how that arm moves around that box.
Yeah, it's a 6-axis robot. So, and what's great is it's the Yaskawa Motoman has made a great robotic arm. And what's really interesting is this robot's been in use for a long time. It's actually, you can find it welding things. I mean, it's such a versatile robot. It can be used for numerous types of applications, from welding to package picking to who knows what else is out there. So it's just a great robot that Yaskawa has provided to us, and we really look forward to deploying more of these in our system.
They're truly beautiful. So you mentioned a lot about how it's learning and it's continuously improving. So is that unit entirely autonomous, or is there someone in a control room taking a look at that one brain that they all share?
Great question, Libby. 95% of the time, 99% of the time, the robots are fully autonomous. They're just chugging along, doing their thing. But if one of them comes across a problem and it's like looking at its bin and it's like, I can't really figure out what I'm supposed to pick here, it can phone a friend and it will actually call somebody in a control room and actually saying, hey, look at this for me and tell me what I can do. And a person on the other end will look at what the robot's saying and say, hey, try that one. And they'll touch their screen and the robot will do its thing. And if it works, it proceeds on. And the person in the control room just sits there waiting for the next call. And it's a great system because, again, that now became part of the robot's learning. It has now learned how to do that. And again, they've all learned it now.
So there's a lot of good questions coming from our chat right now, and there's a lot of excitement too. I think my favorite comment is, love me some beautiful automation. But the question goes along with it is, do the robots run continuously? Like, what's the uptime for these robots?
Well, that they're based here in our sorting operation here in Memphis. They really work just during the sort times. And here in Memphis, we have 2 sorts. We have a day sort that takes place during the day, but normally between 10 a.m. to about 2 p.m., maybe plus or minus an hour, depending on just how much volume it is. And then there's a night sort, again, about from 10 p.m. to about 2 a.m., give or take an hour, depending on volume. So there is some downtime, and that's when our maintenance teams get in there and they'll check the heads, make sure everything's working okay. They'll do a check of all the belts, make sure that the guys are doing great. And what's really funny is you asked this question of Master Sergeant Miller was, do we name the robots? And actually the employees have named all the robots. And sometimes it's a funny thing is sometimes they'll say, Sue had a little bit of an issue this evening. Can you check her head? And the technician's looking at that, it's like, which one's Sue? And because each one of them does have a technical number that they're supposed to go to. So it is sort of funny of the employees have named each one of them. But our technical team, our mechanical team, just sort of sees them as numbers still. So there is some of that confusion sometimes, but it is interesting is we have named our robots.
Well, it probably shows that the people who are working with them have gotten attached to them a little bit. And I hope Sue had got a mental health break and was been able to be taken care of right there. You've been working with these, you said, for about a year, since just before the pandemic started. What have been some of the coolest benefits in incorporating these robots into your center?
Well, I mean, what's really done is definitely helped our employees to spread out more. One employee can focus on several robots and work on that side of the facility with just those robots. We do have robotic team leaders that are monitoring the robots during the sort. And so that's allowed us to spread out. Also, it's just helped us with the inundation of all these e-commerce shipments. Everyone is ordering things now. And so the robots have really helped us of letting them do the pick and place of putting the packages into the sort system and freeing our employees to focus on some of the other things to make sure that our flights and trucks are getting out on time, making sure paperwork's done correctly. And when the robots need help, as I said, they will call saying, hey, I need some help over here. And then the employees can go fix that for them. And then they can go back to focusing on some of those other tasks while the robots are doing their thing.
That makes a lot of sense. Swiss Precision in our chat posted, that's quite a lot of hardware for some letters. How much energy does it use to run in this schedule you described?
Not that much. Actually, we really did not have to upgrade much of the facility at all when it came to electric supplies and all that. We did have to put in the install for the air tanks so that the suction could run and all that, but really, the robots are not really draining the system that much. I mean, it is a huge facility, but they are sorting, each one of them is sorting about 1,000 packages per hour. So it is a lot of packages that they're still processing for us each day. So as I said, 4 to 5 hours per sort, 2 sorts a night. So sometimes some of these guys are getting up to 10,000 packages each that they're inducting. So that's 10,000 customers that are having their packages touched by one robot.
That is a lot of packages. And, it's really interesting because, on our first robotics teams, there's a lot of different skill sets that go in. It's a diverse team working together to solve a problem, but all throughout with robotics. I was wondering if you could comment maybe on some of the diverse skill sets within your plant of the people who are working with these robots.
Oh, it runs the gamut. And this is what's so great about robotics is you don't need to be a roboticist by trade. There's so many different skill sets that apply to this. Actually, we have mechanical guys, electrical, but there's also just the whole communication and talking about the robots and how the employees are going to deal with them, training our employees. So if you have numerous different types of skill sets available to you, and maybe you're not strong on the electrical or mechanical, that does not mean there's not a career for you in robotics. There are so many opportunities to work with robotics across numerous ways. Actually, I think that one of the best growing fields is actually people that can understand how a human and a robot are going to interact with. What is that mental part? So human robot interaction, I think there's a huge growing field for that of just how do we help our fellow human beings realize how they're going to work with robotics in the future.
Yeah, that's a great field. And I think there's something that a lot of, the first students will have picked up on a lot throughout their career and something they can be really excited about going forward. One final question here, and, a lot of our teams, you're using a suction gripper on that robot, and suction has not always been the most successful in the competition space. So I'm wondering, why was suction chosen over the other types of possible end effectors, like a grabber or a roller or something like that?
Oh, I mean, it really came down to just the diversity of our packages. I mean, we could have a little box like this, then the next thing you have to do is pick up something this big, and then you got to pick up something this small. I mean, it really gets crazy. And so suction just became the easier thing of just being able to come down, apply the suction, pull up the piece, and then place it down. So it really just came down to that, just the package diversity.
And that makes a lot of sense because so often our teams are usually picking up the same object over and over again. So it makes sense why they would be going away from it. So that's just like, there's always a good reason for these things. Things don't happen by accident. Aaron, thank you so much for being here. This was super insightful and super exciting. And once again, thank you to FedEx for all the generous support of FIRST over the years. And we can't wait to see how robotics evolves in your facilities. And we can't wait to see more of you and your team at the next time we have a FIRST in-person event.
Thank you guys for having me, and good luck to all the teams this year. Looking forward to seeing some great stuff from you guys.
Well, Libby, that was a lot of fun, but we got more fun to come, right?
Of course. That was awesome. I loved getting to watch that robot work, and quite honestly, I got very distracted watching it kind of pick away at those packages. Our final segment tonight, though, for National Robotics Week at Disney and the very cool world of animatronics with Walt Disney Imagineer Asa Kalama. Asa, welcome to our show tonight. Thank you.
Hey, how are you guys? Nice to see you.
We're doing
good.
great.
Thank you so much for being.
I'm still geeking out.
The show, the celebration tonight. I know the internet, it happens. Also, I'd love to talk a little bit to start off so that our chat can get a chance to know what you do and ask you questions. What is your role at Walt Disney Imagineering?
Sure. I'm a creative director with Walt Disney Imagineering. I've been with the company for over 16 years. I started in the research and development group, where I spent a considerable amount of time working on free-ranging robots, things like the Muppet Mobile Lab and Lucky the Dinosaur. And most recently, spent about 5.5 years working to create Star Wars Galaxy's Edge. In my role of creative director, I have the profound opportunity to work with some of the most talented people on the entire planet to create immersive experiences for guests to enjoy at Disney theme parks all around the world.
Wow, it sounds like an amazing world that you get to be a part of. I know Galaxy's Edge has been such a cool experience for so many people. I've yet to experience it, but I cannot wait till I can finally go down. But obviously, you're involved in a lot of cool projects. And, when you think about Imagineering, a lot of it is taking a concept like a cartoon character, something that's only existed in 2D space, and then turning that into an interactive and immersive piece of reality. So what is that process like from start to finish?
Yeah, one of the things that's really exciting about the work that we do is we so often have to translate things that have never existed in reality into the real world. And so what we love to do is find fun and creative ways to misuse existing technologies, or sometimes invent completely brand new ones, to bring to life various experiences. Now, when it comes to characters, a lot of the times they have different shapes or different form factors that could possibly be brought to life by any other means other than audio animatronic technology. What you're actually seeing up on screen right here at the moment is one of the figures that we created for the Millennium Falcon Smuggler's Run attraction at Star Wars Galaxy's Edge. What's so exciting about this figure is it's one of the most advanced audio animatronics figures that we've ever created. It's got over 50 different functions, giving it this incredible ability to perform in a very believable and expressive way. But even though we use technology to bring these things to life, it doesn't start with technology. Everything that we do starts specifically with a story. So we start first with, okay, what's the scene that we're trying to bring to life? What are the characters that we think are really important to bring it to life? From there, we start to do the actual design, to think a little bit about, what is the physicality of the character? What is the shape of it? What is it ultimately going to wear? And so we'll spend a lot of time doing concept paintings and sketches and renderings, and sometimes even pre-visualization to nail down what it is that we're trying to accomplish long before we actually start engineering anything. Once we have a sense for how all that's going to work, the next step is starting to figure out, well, how is it going to move? And sometimes that even starts with somebody literally acting out and performing the different behaviors or gestures that we think we want to ultimately be able to deliver. And then we'll sit down with our mechanical engineering team and figure out the best way to engineer the figure to be able to give us that creative performance that is so important to us, that we're really looking to deliver. And then once we have sort of the underlying mechanics, then we have to bring it to life with animation. And there we turn to our amazing both controls teams as well as figure animators who have this innate ability to bring life to, what would otherwise be, electronics and motors and gears and aluminum, but make the guest truly believe that it's a living entity.
That's definitely something that I always associate with the Disney experience, is that magic of, oh wow, this is real. I'm in this. That true immersion has just been magical. Seems cheesy and overused, but truly magical.
Yeah, and there's so much that goes into this, but I think about you've been showing us Hondo Ohnaka, who his character is this rascally but charming pirate. And his personality is just incredibly bold. How do you convey a character who's so beloved and has that distinct personality? How do you convey that via animatronics?
Yeah, we had an incredible partnership with Lucasfilm and the original creators of the character for the animated series. So Hondo appears both in Rebels and the Clone Wars TV shows, and Dave Filoni, the original creator, worked very closely with us to make sure that we were capturing the essence, the spirit of who Hondo Ohnaka is First, not only in the sculpt, secondly, in the amazing performance of the live voice actor, Jim Cummings, and then ultimately in the actual animation of the figure itself. And that's one of the reasons why we really push to make this figure have so many functions, is because the character of Hondo is so expressive. He is a big hand talker, and making sure that we had the requisite number of functions to really make that feel believable.
So under the hood of Hondo, is there, obviously there's a lot going on there. There's so many functions and there's so many degrees of freedom. Is there something that you're especially proud of on the technological side that you did? Because, you said earlier, sometimes you have to invent new technologies to make these things come to life. So is there something in there you'd love to share with us?
Yeah, I think one of the many amazing achievements found in Hondo is really an exercise in packaging, right? In order to be able to drive all those various functions, right, each one requires its own drive or its own motor, right? And so ultimately, finding a way to package that into something that still has the right proportion and scale, and it feels like what guests would expect from a character perspective, but also making sure that it works mechanically to not only have the fluidity and the speed that's required, but perhaps even more importantly, the durability and the robustness to repeat that performance over and over and over again, day after day, year after year.
And so with the character, an exhibit as dynamic and as complicated as Hondo Ohnaka, do you have like a specific team of people who are responsible for the maintenance and, if something goes wrong and dealing with that on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, absolutely. We have a phenomenal maintenance team that works in partners with operations at all of our parks and resorts, and they work diligently to make sure that the show that guests see on any given day is just as good as the very first day when we originally programmed the figure.
What's really fascinating about this to me is, the process that you've talked about, where it's like, outlining what needs to happen to bring this to life is so similar to the strategic design process our teams go with, where, they receive a game and then they have to figure out, okay, how are we going to optimize a robot? They don't know what the robot's going to look like, but they decide like a sketch of like the characteristics, and then they have to translate that in the same way. And it's really neat that the same robotic process that teams are going through in a elementary school and high school robotics process is what's happening on the big stage as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Really, I think the most critical thing before you start building anything of any scale or any complexity is to really ground yourself in a clear understanding of what is it that you're trying to accomplish and what are the basic requirements of that object. Because it's a lot easier to make those decisions and iterate on them early than it is to decide once the thing percent constructed that all of a sudden you want it to do a new thing that you hadn't contemplated early in the design process.
Libby and I are just nodding our heads here because it's absolutely so relatable. The question that you're asking yourself, what is the problem we're trying to solve? What is the problem we're trying to solve? And go back to that. Libby, chat is buzzing right now. There's a lot of good stuff in here.
Yes.
You want to take away some questions, please?
Absolutely. So our first one is again very specific to Hondo. How are you able to capture those lifelike movements? Are there tracking markers on actors, or is that all kind of programmed from the base that you've built? And then we've got a bunch of questions about how you got to do what you do, because everyone wants to do it. But let's talk about Hondo first.
Yeah, Hondo is actually 100% hand animated. So we have an absolutely phenomenal figure animator who, using a 3D animation software, first pre-visualizes what all of the functions will do to make sure that it's driving that performance in a way that feels believable, true to the character. And then ultimately the sort of translation process where that then actually gets played back on the real production hardware. And invariably what you'll find, right, is there's a slight discrepancy between what's simulated and what actually happens in real life. And so there'll be a final sort of tuning and polish phase to make sure that the performance that you're seeing on the actual figure is exactly what's intended.
I think any member of the FIRST community watching from the chat understands there's slight differences between the code and what it'll do on the field. So we have to, try it again. That's definitely another process that seems pretty similar between FIRST teams and Walt Disney Imagineering. There's a ton of questions about your career and your background. So and a lot of them are totally aimed at taking a role on the team and getting to work with you. What kind of background and experience do you have? What was your degree in? What was your journey to becoming an Imagineer?
Sure. So my personal background is actually in theater. I studied theater at UCLA and also focused really heavily on interactive and interaction design while I was there as well. But one of the things about Walt Disney Imagineering that makes it so unique is the scale and the complexity of the things that we build is truly on the level of almost creating mini cities. And so to do that, it requires an incredible breadth of talent. So, we have over 140 different disciplines that all work in collaboration to bring all of these experiences to life. So, it's everything from mechanical engineers to landscape architects to material scientists to writers to musicians. So there really isn't one specific area of study important or critical to become an Imagineer, because really we take advantage of a breadth of talent. Really, I think the most important sort of attribute of an Imagineer is a hunger and a desire to continue to learn and to sort of push the boundaries of what's possible. And that can come from anyone, regardless of what they happen to study in school.
I mean, it sounds quite a bit like there's someone else I know who talks a lot about enthusiasm and, being excited about what you're doing and how it serves you well. I don't know. There's a TED Talk or something. Anyway, I think this has just been so incredible. I mean, there's lots of questions about sort of your design process. S3529, I want to make sure I get the numbers right in our chat here. How do you avoid, as a team, getting bogged down in the small details, like worrying about the position of one specific finger if you're problem solving on your designs?
That's a really great question, and something that all project teams really need to make sure that they keep a close eye on. Oftentimes you can get really close to something. You can spend so much time working on a project that you start to see, little details and little idiosyncrasies that maybe might not be as readily apparent to others. So a really important thing is to always get a set of fresh eyes. So, whenever we're programming a figure, for example, right, it's not just the project team that's looking at the ultimate character performance, right, but we're bringing in, peers and other folks that, may work in other parts of the company to also get their feedback, because it can be really easy to fall into the trap of obsessing about things that ultimately, in the grand scheme of things, might not actually be that big of an issue.
So, one of the other things that I've always wondered is when you're working on Star Wars type projects, and the fandom is so dedicated, and so they care about these characters so much. How do you feel a pressure to, like, we have to get Hondo right? We have to be true to their experience, or like, is that a lot of pressure, or is it just like, no, we have a plan for what this character is going to look like, and we're just going to make it happen?
No, we had an incredible sense of both excitement and also responsibility in creating everything in Star Wars Galaxy's Edge. I think you absolutely touched on it, right? That we knew that there's 40 years fandom of people who've been, champing at the bit to have that opportunity to step into a galaxy far, far away. And so we wanted to make sure that we were delivering against those expectations. So as I mentioned earlier, that meant partnering with, Lucasfilm, Skywalker Sound, Industrial Light and Magic, all the original creators, writers, directors, that on the actual films, to make sure that it had that level of authenticity. So, for example, the costume that Hondo wears was sketched by an artist up at Lucasfilm, was actually patterned originally by a costume designer in Pinewood Studios, actually working on the latest trilogy, and then was then translated by our amazing internal figure finishing team into the costume that you see today. Dave Filoni, the director of the creator of the character, was involved in the creation of the figure. The original voice actor from the show was also part of the experience. So needless to say, we spent a considerable amount of time and effort making sure that we were getting, every last detail that we possibly could as right as it could possibly be.
That is so cool to hear. Like those details were just really looked into, and that's just really, really neat. Asa, this has been really inspirational, and I think it's been great for our community. But do you have any last wisdom you'd like to share with our community or for the aspiring Imagineers out there?
I would just say continue to be curious, continue to think of new and exciting ways to take an existing technology or principle and turn it on its head and turn it into something new and amazing and wonderful.
That is really great advice. Asa, thank you so much for being here. Thanks to Walt Disney Imagineering, everything for all the support at first and everything that you've done, and keep doing cool stuff out there. And we're going to come see it.
Thank you guys so much.
Libby, this was a lot of fun, right?
Oh yeah, this was a blast. I learned so much. I got excited about awesome, good doggo robots from the United States Air Force. We got to check out some package sorters with our friends from FedEx, and of course a look behind all of the cool technology from Walt Disney Imagineering. I would call that a good way to celebrate National Robotics Week, wouldn't you?
I would too. I have to admit, like, my Star Wars fanboy was coming out in that interview. I was just like, this is he mentioned Dave Filoni. Yeah, this is great. Blair, what did you think of all this action tonight?
That was awesome. I mean, there's only probably one thing better than the way we spent the last 45 minutes. That would be like being at a first competition and actually competing with robots or playing with robots.
It's going to happen soon. It's going to happen soon, right, Blair? Right?
Yeah. 2022, baby. It's all going to happen. There we go. This summer, who knows? It's, we're reaching the end, aren't we? Hey, one thing you guys sort of picked out of all of our guests was both things about skill sets, but also just the real world applications mirroring exactly what goes on, like, on the teams.
When Dean and Woody came up with this program, it wasn't by accident. Like, the design had a real purpose, and it was to mimic real world situations. And sometimes we get so immersed in our community and so immersed in our environment, we think that we're in a bubble, and we are to a certain degree, but it really is a mirror of what you're doing. And when you graduate and you go out to the workforce, you start to realize, oh yeah, this is like that time on my first team, and like every single job I've had always ties back to, oh yeah, like this is like when we did this on the team, or this is like when we built that, and so those skills sort of apply. And I also thought that, I thought Asa's story was really great. Like, a theater major at UCLA. Do you think he dreamed that he was going to be commanding teams of engineers and that sort of thing? And so often we have first students who are just like, yeah, I could never do that because I don't have this skill, or I don't have that skill. But no, you can. There's so many options, and our world is rapidly changing. Technologies are evolving, and there's a blurring between fields. So those traditional delineations just aren't there anymore.
Man, the number of occupations. Yeah, go ahead, Libby.
I was just going to say, I think what was so great, too, Aaron from FedEx brought the same component in, was, there are so many people from so many different disciplines that work on our team, and we all have to work together to make these robots work. And I think that's pretty familiar to those of us in the first community, but it's so nice to see as a mentor, as a program alumni, that experience is going to carry you through into the real world, no matter what that real world looks like for you as a first participant, right? Whether you're going to mechanical engineering or to theater, you have all of these amazing collaborative problem-solving skills, and that's such an amazing benefit of being in the first programs.
Well, and a big thanks to you two for leading the conversation. It's been a fun ride tonight, going behind the scenes of some of the world's coolest and most innovative organizations. Big thanks to our three guests, too, for helping the first community learn how and why our sponsors are engaging robotics in their workplaces. So big props to you two for leading the conversation. Thanks for joining us tonight.
Thanks for having us, Blair. Always glad to help out.
Thanks, Blair.
Yeah. All right, we'll see you around the track. Now, there are some terrific takeaways from tonight's show. And not only around the technology, but about the many paths available to follow your passion, like we were just talking about. Now, each one of our guests spoke about the need for a diverse, collaborative team to make these machines a reality, much like the first teams. And the workplace requires a variety of skill sets and teamwork to truly be successful. Now, we've got another interesting career conversation coming up exploring the intersection of robotics and healthcare with longtime sponsor Johnson & Johnson on Thursday, April 29th at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. First, mentors and alumni from J&J will share how the skills they've developed and honed as part of FIRST are applicable to their everyday work, from designing surgical robots to developing life-saving medication. You can learn more and register now at this link. So make sure you tune into that one. A lot of careers in robotics. Healthcare is a big one. Now, it's been a super busy month with you all submitting your awards and completing the challenges, so you may have missed it. But the Christa Mcauliffe Silver Dollar went on sale last month, and FIRST teams were instrumental in its creation through their passionate advocacy. Distribution of the coin started a couple of weeks ago, with First Lady and educator Dr. Jill Biden receiving the first coin in Concord, New Hampshire, alongside Deed and Judge Stephen Mcauliffe. It features the FIRST logo. The coin honors Christa's legacy and impact in STEM and supports FIRST, as FIRST will receive a portion of the proceeds. More details can be found on the U.S. Mint website. National Teachers Week is coming soon, and what better way to honor your teachers and mentors than with a Mcauliffe Silver Dollar, which honors teachers, but also FIRST. It's a win-win. Now, as we speed toward graduation season, yay, seniors! Fourth years, consider the FIRST store for your graduation present shopping. It is stocked with lots of great FIRST gear to celebrate your graduate's journey in FIRST. Now, there are so many stories from FIRST alums who identify and connect with other alums during their first weeks in college because of the FIRST logo they're wearing. So not only do you look cool, you get to network and make new friends on campus next fall. The FIRST store has what you want to make your graduate happy, so go check it out. Now, we've got a lot more Beyond the Bots coming up this season, so stay tuned for more information on our upcoming shows. I'm Blair from FIRST, sending out a big thanks to all our game-changing guests for everything they do inspire the students of FIRST and beyond. And another big thanks to our sponsors and to our guests tonight for all their continued support. And a special thanks to my co-hosts, Libby and Karthik, and to you for watching. Be well, be FIRST, and we'll see you soon. Good night.